Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Analyzing Customer Satisfaction Data. This is kind of a how-to graph quadrant analysis or performance importance analysis data. So you'll remember with improvement, there are primarily two ways that we show improvement data. One of them is the improvement index, and there are formulas. It's kind of a quantitative number that we come up with, and the highest number we know is what we get the most improvement opportunities for. Okay, but there's another way, and it's even much more popular in practice, and it's called improvement or performance importance analysis, also known as quadrant analysis. And in quadrant analysis, we take the same data that the improvement index looks at, right? Same data. It's importance data, it's performance data, and instead of kind of calculating an index, we just graph the data, right? And that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. How do you actually graph performance importance data? Let's get started. All right, so that's what we're talking about in performance importance analysis. And analyzing this data, remember that we're plotting attribute importance and satisfaction on a 2x2 grid. Earlier I showed you something that looked just like this, where we have importance data on the vertical axis, we have performance data on the x-axis or the horizontal axis. And remember, we kind of come up with these different quadrants: major weaknesses, strengths, minor weaknesses, and strengths. Voila. Now, you can do this particular one. Shows you in the example I'm going to show you is with what I would say our own customer satisfaction data, where we do not have relative to a best competitor. But you can do the same exact thing. You just got to kind of change the boundaries of it. Let's get started. Before we get started, though, I got to thank these two, because I didn't really know how to do this, or I didn't know how to do it well. And these two, I can't give you their name because they might be in a witness protection program. But these two came to me and said, hey, we're working on our final project, and we think this is a really cool looking performance importance analysis chart. What do you think of it? Or did we do it right? And I was like, oh, I love it. How'd you do it? So they taught me how to do it. Thank you. All right, so here's our data, for example. All right, so let's talk about this data. We have attribute A, B, C, and D. And remember that we have performance data and we have importance data. And here it is, right? So the performance data for attribute A is a 9.1. And remember that on the performance, it goes from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. Like all our customer satisfaction data. And importance, we're going to use correlation analysis, so it goes from 0 to 1. So you can see that we had 9.1 on the customer satisfaction data. Sounds like we're doing pretty good. And then we also have the 0.7, and as you can see, that's the highest correlation analysis, okay, meaning the most important. So now what we want to do is we want to graph this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this data from and let's imagine, for example, that we just did SPSS. We came up with the attribute means, and then we ran the importance analysis with correlation analysis. We have the data, and if you're doing this for the competitions, we're just going to use the same data that we've used, and same thing with the project. So we've already calculated the data. Now we're just going to go to graph it. I'm going to leave my workbook. I'm going to go over here, and what we want to do is we want to insert a chart. Now, it's not a column, it's not a line, it's not a pie, it's not a bar. We got to go to other, or at least in mine we do. And really what we're looking for here is this marked scatter plot, okay? And when you do that, you add the chart, the data window or the Excel window with the data is going to pop up. Now what I always like to do is kind of put my data there. That's the original data. And now I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to put it in. Now I'm betting that if you have a problem with this, it's because you're going to mix up the performance importance. So what I always like to do is kind of have my performance on the x-axis, which is the horizontal, and importance is on that y-axis or the vertical axis. All right, so now that we've put our data in there and I've got that chart, let's get out of this and see how it looks. Ah, there it goes. Hey, this is looking pretty good actually. First thing I want to do is I want to take this thing and let's make the whole page with it, right? And there we go. Okay. And then I don't like the titles I put on these things, so I'm going to get rid of those. Get rid of those. Yeah, bigger graph. There we go. Now the first thing you guys know what I'm going to do too is I'm going to mess with the text, right? And I didn't do that right. I'm going to right click, format chart, format text. Let's do that. All right, and 18 never works for me. Let's try 28. Let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, much better. Okay. All right, so the first things first, we know that the defaults are dangerous, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is start messing with the defaults. And by the way, just so you know, so we have here is the importance and here is the performance, and you can see these dots on the screen. Those are our attributes, okay? And so it's kind of has the beginning. Now we're going to have to kind of take this and do some of our own adaptations to it, but we're pretty much there. So the first thing that I want to do is start messing with the defaults. Now, my rule of thumb is always to take the range of data and then make our axes the range plus a bit. Very technical, I know. So what we're going to do here is the highest on the importance is 0.7 and the lowest on the importance is 0.35. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the scale. I just clicked on the scale. I'm going to take the scale and we're going to go from a minimum of 0.25. There we go. Actually, the maximum is what I wanted. I was going to go 0.75. All right, so let's do that. Perfect. So now we have that, and you can see, you know, that all the values are within that. Now, I'm also going to do the same thing with the horizontal axis. I'm going to click on that scale, and we're going to go from 6 to 10. And 6 to 10 is kind of common for me, and so we're going to do it that way, 6 to 10, and it's range plus a bit. And what you see here is that all of those scores kind of fall within there. Okay, now you know, I'm actually not liking that a little bit. I'm going to kind of change that. Let's do a 7 here. And what I like is I like to kind of spread the data points out because I think that gives us the best look at the data points. Boom, there we go. Okay, now so what we have now is we have these attributes spread out. Now what I want to do too is I want to take those, I'm going to double click on those, and those are the marker styles, and I'm going to, let's get away from that, and I'm going to make them much bigger. Okay, so I kind of want to go the triangles, and I'm going to make them much bigger. I want those things to kind of pop. Okay, and that's good. And then there we go. And then what we can, I like that, right? So those kind of show up, but let's see if we wanted to, well, we'll mess with color later. All right, so now we have the quadrant, and now what we need to do are to put kind of some axes, some lines between them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my insert, and I'm going to get some shapes. There we go. And so over here, the first shape that I want is this triangle. Okay, there we go. I'll get you out of there. And what we're going to do is I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to take the fill. I want that blue fill, so I'm going to go no fill. Okay, and then let's make the line. Right now it kind of defaults as a blue. I don't want that. I want black lines on it. There we go. Okay, so now what I want this to do is to kind of line up with that. Oh my goodness, that looks good, doesn't it, Garth? Oh, there you go. So now that kind of frames the outside of the scatter plot, which is exactly what we wanted. Now what I need to do are to put those kind of quadrant dividers, those lines. So again, I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to go to a shape, and this time I just need lines, right? And so that's exactly what we're going to do. And again, that line is, we want to make that line, oops, black. Okay, and so we're going to go, now what we always have these lines, you got to remember that these lines are always going to kind of go in the midpoints. And so I'm actually, when I'm coming up with, that's not very straight. There we go, now it's straight, right? So our data range goes on the important side, goes from 0.75 to 0.25, and we're going to use 0.5 as the midline, right? And I kind of try to pitch those ranges where the midpoint makes sense. Now we have 7 to 10 on the horizontal, so 8.5 is going to be that midpoint line. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to copy it, we'll make another one. Okay, and now we're going to go up here, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to put it right on that 5, right there. Now we got to make that straight, and we got some great tools for doing that. Boom. Oop. There we go, straight. There we go. So now we have our quadrant analysis. And you can see now that we actually, it just kind of worked out this way. But over here in this quadrant, we know that we're doing the best over here, and it's most important, right? So this value, in fact, if I go there, you can see it's a 9.1 and it's 0.7, right? And so that would be what we'd call a major strength. Most important, we're doing really well on it. Over here, this would be the major weakness, and you can see on the screen there that the importance is 0.6, but we're below that 8.5 line, so we're not doing nearly as well. There you go. Now, what we may want to do is we may want to label what these attributes are. We may want to change the colors on it. We're going to make it pretty, but that's how you do it. Okay, so now what I want to do is just really quickly show you that you can do the same exact thing with relative customer satisfaction data or using performance ratio. So we have the same thing over here, and the only change to the data that I've made, and I'll go up to the actual Excel chart, is you can see here's the importance data, right? And that's the same data that we've had, but I have changed the performance data, and you can see that these are performance ratios. So there's a 1.07, a 1.01, a 0.94, 0.93. Remember, this is us divided by them, and this is relative customer satisfaction data. If we have a 1, it means we're directly tied with the competition. If it's a 0.97 to 1.03, we're within that zone of indifference. If it's higher than 1.03, we know we have an advantage. If it's lower than 1.97, we know we're disadvantaged, we're losing to the competition. So the only thing I've done is just put in performance data. Now, I've not gone through the painstaking details of getting the right text and size. I've kind of just gone and done that. So let me show you what that would look like. So here is I'll show you full size. This is the quadrant analysis, and you can see, by the way, this is not completely pretty. We can do some of the different things, but you can see over here, this is the midpoint. That's a 1 with performance, and that's the zone of indifference, 1.03 to 0.97. Maybe we make those different colors. You can see that this button, I made it blue because we're winning. You can see I put this one black because it's tied. We're within the zone of indifference, and these two are trouble because we're losing on those. And so I've kind of used some colors. If we were, we'd take a lot more time making this thing pretty. We might put a title on it, all that kind of stuff. We definitely would want to label, like for example, it's that attribute A, B, C, or D. We're going to take our time, but I just wanted to show you that with relative customer satisfaction using performance ratios, we can do the same exact thing. So this is a powerful tool because graphically, pictorially, it shows what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and it says, hey, it gives us some ideas from a picture standpoint of what we should work on. This data should coincide with the improvement index. It's just another way to look at it. Some people like the hard number, some people like the picture. This is much more common in practice though, so that's why I wanted to show you how to do it. All right, my friends, I'll see you in the next exciting episode of Marketing 450.